In this video, I am sharing amazing Christmas ornaments you will definitely want to make. From quick and easy to more intricate designs, I've got you covered. Let's get started. I had picked up this beautiful frame from the thrift store and I needed to remove the back. You can tell it's a higher quality frame by the work that's put into it. I didn't like how shiny it was, so I wanted to tone down the gold by using this spun gold craft paint by DecoArt. I'm applying it using a makeup sponge. It will create more of an antique gold look, and it will just go with what I've got going on my tree and in my decor a whole lot better. I applied some to the edge as well, being very careful not to get it on the black velvet. Now for this particular ornament, I was inspired by this ornament here that I had seen in my local store and I loved it. I loved the cardinal and that gold frame, but I knew I would be able to do this using this frame. I allowed it to dry and then gave it a coat of the Mod Podge sealant, and you can see how pretty that is. Here I've got a scrapbook paper I picked up last year from Michael's, and it had a red cardinal. I'm using the glass from the frame, and that is what I'm going to use to trace out around the cardinal. That way here I will have the exact size I need to fit into my frame. So you can see the pencil lines there, so I'm just going to take my scissors and cut it out. Here is the name of that scrapbook paper. I'm not sure if Michael's will still have it in stock or not, so you will have to check out your local store, but you could also print out any cardinal image that is free for personal use online. So I'm just going to fit the frame back together. I didn't want the glare and shine off of the glass, so I'm putting the glass back in place behind my paper. And then I'm also going to be putting the backing on, but I did not want the stand. So I am being very careful using my wire snips and busy bending it until that backing pops off the little stand. And you could leave it on and just use this as is if you'd like. But again, I'm turning this into an ornament, so I wanted to remove that. Now, I didn't bother covering up those holes, but you can definitely add something at the back. I love how this is looking so far, but of course I needed to create a hanger. I found some trim in my stash that matched really well with the gold on the front of our frame there. So I'm just going to trim off a little piece of the cording. Now, I like to tie little knots on each end. I find that just helps the glue to adhere a little bit better. I just find it just gives it a little bit more to grab onto. So I measured out where I needed to place my little knots, and then I added a little dab of glue, pressed that into place. You could add something at the back there to cover up the cording if you'd like. I didn't bother. It's not going to bother me, but if you're making these for somebody, then you'll definitely want to see what you can find to cover that up if that is a concern. So I just added my glue, trimmed it up as needed, and then that's it. It is ready to be hung on your tree, and I just absolutely love it. So fun and festive. I had this mini cloche in my stash from my local store. I have seen other cloches elsewhere. I've seen them on Amazon. You'll have to have a look around to see if you can find them, but this one is the Multicraft brand. I am going to be giving the base a coat of this metallic green paint from DecoArt. I wanted kind of a beautiful shimmer, but not too much. I still kind of wanted it to be earthy to go with the look that I am going for this particular piece. So I'm just going to, again, continue to cover up the base. I'm doing the underside, as well. Here I've got this velvet mushroom that I made. I've got a whole video full of mushroom DIYs. I'll have that video linked down below. I glued that to the center of my base. I'm using some jute twine for my hanger. I folded it in half and I'm tying the two ends together to create a knot. Now I am also going to be using a wood bead. I find that wood beads work really well to attach to create a hanger for a piece like this. So I needed to string the bead on, and the twine should be thin enough to create a knot so you can pull the knot inside the bead. I added just a little bit of hot glue, and then I pulled that knot inside with the glue, and then that will give you a nice flat surface to attach to the top of our cloche topper. So I'm using a combination of some Gorilla Glue and a hot glue. I find that, sorry, this is not Gorilla Glue, this is Gorilla Silicone Sealant. It works really, really well. I've used it to attach plastic and glass together, and I'm telling you, it works great. But I did use a combination with the sealant, the silicone sealant plus hot glue. So I attached that to the top. Now while that's setting up, I'm adding a bit of moss underneath the cute little mushroom. I'm just using this preserved reindeer moss that I got from Dollar Tree. I'm just being very, very careful not to get the moss into the ridge where the cloche cover is going to be sitting. So I'm just again using hot glue to attach the moss. You can use some Spanish moss as well, or use any other little decorative touches. I've got this faux snow. It's left over from a previous project. That's why it's a little bit dirty, but it works great for this. I'm using some hot glue to attach that onto the moss to create a nice wintry look. You could also add some cute little figurines in this. If you don't have mushrooms, that's okay. But I was inspired again by my travels. There was so much mushroom decor out there, and I saw this particular ornament and I knew I could recreate it. So I'm adding some cute little cedar pine cones that are recently foraged. I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue and attach those, just tucking them into the moss. I've never used cedar pine cones for my crafts before, so I was excited to try these out. They're a great size for little projects like this. I'll have that foraging video linked down below for you as well. So I'm just going to make sure the cloche fits over top and there's nothing stopping it from closing up. I'm adding glue into the groove, going to put that cloche into place, and there you have it. It's perfect. I am loving this ornament. Dollar Tree has an assortment of metal tags, and I picked out the rectangular one. It's perfect. It's got the rounded edges. So for this one, I am actually going to be turning it into a little cookie sheet. I needed to bend up the edges. Taking my ruler and I'm measuring 1/2 inch, and that will place my fold line just underneath that little hanger dot. I am adding a little dot so I know exactly where to draw my line. I'll draw my line using a Sharpie marker. It's a thin Sharpie marker. I'm going to measure out the same spot on the opposite side. And then this is a little trick. You can see my lines there. I placed it onto this craft mat, put my ruler in place, reached my hand underneath my craft mat, and bent the edge up. I'm telling you, that worked really, really well. And then that will give you a cookie sheet look. Doesn't that look so cool? I love how that worked. So now I wanted to tone down the tin look of this. So I'm using some gray paint by just from the local craft store. I'm dabbing it on with a paintbrush and then dabbing it off using a rag. That will just kind of make it so it looks a little bit more like a cookie tray instead of a piece of tin. You can see how well that worked. So I'm just going to continue to do that, and then I added some to the back side as well. I'm setting that aside to allow it to dry. I'm using a combination of some tan paint as well as some burnt sienna. I'm mixing it together, adding a touch of burnt umber because it wasn't quite dark enough for my liking, but this is completely by choice. You mix up your paint color that you'd like to create a gingerbread color. I've got these laser cut wood pieces from my stash. It's got lots of cute little pieces here. Use anything that you have in your stash or that you can find. You just want to make sure that they're small enough that can fit on your little cookie tree. So I'm going to paint each one. I only needed to paint the one side, and then I'm going to set these aside and allow them to dry. They're all nice and dry. Now I'm going to be using this Slick Paint by Tulip. Now, I've never used this stuff before, believe it or not, but I wanted to create the look of icing. So I'm being very, very careful, but I'm telling you, I was not very steady with my hand. I kind of did a sloppy job, but I'm like, you know what? It'll be okay. I still loved how it turned out. It definitely had the look of icing. So I'm sure there's other brands of this dimensional paint out there as well. So you'll just have to check it out. But all I did was just fill in those little flower shapes. And then for the tree, I'm just creating kind of like the tips of the tree branches are touched by snow. And then I went over the little gingerbread man and added the little details on him. And then you want to make sure that this does not dry because I am adding the look of like little sugar pieces. This is actually some plastic bits from some faux stained glass kits that I had found at my local thrift store. But you can use some glitter, some seed beads, anything that you have to add these little details. And I am applying them onto the icing. Before it dries, I'm using some tweezers to apply it. My tweezers got gummed up a little bit, so I did have to clean them off once in a while, so just keep that in mind. But of course, if you have other tips, please feel free to drop those down in the comment section. That really helps all of us out. So I'm just going to continue to decorate these little guys, and then I'm allowing them to dry. Okay, now everything is nice and dry, ready to go. I wanted to add some glitter because I, again, found this. I had seen tons of cookie sheet ornaments out there. This is my inspiration piece. I found it in my travels recently, and there was a little bit of glitter on the tray, but I didn't want it to be too heavy. So I'm using this micro glitter paint by DecoArt. It's in the color Ice. It'll just add just a touch of a shine as if there's a dusting of sugar that fell onto the cookie sheet. It is really, really pretty. And then for the cookies, I am using some matte decoupage glue and this diamond sugar dust by Craft Mart, I believe it was. I am going to add some Mod Podge decoupage to my cookies, and then before the glue sets up, I'll be sprinkling the sugar dust on top. You could also use some clear glitter as well. That would work. Just use whatever you have. This again was just from my local craft store. I'm not sure if Michael's has something like this or not. So I added that. I'm just tapping it off on the backside and then allowing that to set up. It didn't take very long and there it turned out so pretty. So now I'm going to start to assemble our ornament. I again am using a combination of some hot glue and my silicone Gorilla sealant. But first I'm just laying out all my cute little faux cookies onto my cookie tray and it's looking so cute. I'm loving it. I'm adding again, so here's my silicone. And I'm using a craft stick to apply it. So I'm just needing a little bit. It doesn't take a whole lot, but I wasn't sure how the wood would stick to the tin. So that's why I decided to add a little bit of the silicone. Here's the hot glue. That'll give you instant hold. Put those into place and then I'm going to allow it to set up just a little bit before I carry on. It was actually kind of cool. My one daughter who loves to craft, she saw this ornament and she fell in love with it and now she's making one for herself, just using some different colors and some shapes. So I'll get her to share that on her Instagram. And I'll have that link down below. All right, so now I'm going to add my hanger. I'm using this beautiful baker's twine. I thought it was fitting for this particular ornament. Folded it in half, put the fold through the hole, and then just pulled the strings through that loop, tied a knot at the top. Now, one thing I like to do is tie a knot on the ends of my baker's twine. That prevents it from fraying too much. I don't mind it fraying a little bit, but I didn't want it to be too much. So I'm just going to do that, trim off the excess, and then it's ready to go. I love this. I think it would be so fun to receive this as a gift. So gingerbread must be on trend this year because I have been seeing so much of it. This is one that I got from my local craft store and I am painting the pieces using that leftover paint that I had already mixed up. Right now for this ornament, I am going to just be painting the boy and the girl. Here again is my inspiration that I found as I was out shopping and checking out all the fun Christmas ornaments out there. and I knew I would be able to recreate it in my own way. So these guys are all dry. Now again, I'm gonna go in and add some of the slick paint to fill in all the details that are still visible on our ornament. I'm telling you, I do not have a very steady hand. I kind of messed up on a few spots, but it's all right. Once you put some of the sugar dust on and you assemble it, you're not even going to really be able to tell. So it was funny. I was crafting all day this day when I was making these ornaments, and my cat was looking for me, and he came and he found me in my craft room, and he had to jump up onto my shoulders. He is such a fun and affectionate cat. He's really been great for our family. Okay, so the slick paint or faux icing is all nice and dry. Again, I am using my decoupage glue and I'm giving it a coat to each of my little gingerbread people. And I'm going to use the sugar dust because the inspiration pieces had the sugar dust on them as well. And I don't know, I really like that look. It makes them look more like cookies. So I'm just going to give a nice coat of the decoupage glue and then sprinkle the sugar dust onto the ornaments. And then I like to pick it up and then tap it off with my finger when I am done both of the ornaments. And I am working on a craft mat, so then if there's any leftover, you can gently either just clean it off into your garbage, or you can just reuse it and put it back into your container. All right, our little guys are all nice and dry. I have this vintage tin in my stash, and I'm going to be using some jute cord. I'm just clipping a long strand, and then again, I'm tying knots on each end. And then I am also going to be just folding this in half and then snipping it in the middle. I didn't want to create my hanger just yet, but I did need to place my string into place. I picked two grooves that were opposite from each other, and again I'm using a combination of my Gorilla silicone as well as some hot glue, and I'm putting some on the inside. And remember, you need to do this before you add anything else, otherwise you're not going to be able to adhere your strings into place because there just won't be any place to do that. So I pushed the knot into the silicone and then used my hot glue for instant adhesion. Now I did add quite a bit, so it did take a little bit longer than usual for the glue to set up, but I just kept on pushing the knot into place until that hot glue had set, and then you're good to go. Now you might be able to punch some holes into this tin. I didn't have the proper tool to do so, so I could not do that. I have some scrap foam, dry floral foam here, and I'm just cutting it down. I always like to test it into place first so I know exactly where the contact spots are. And then I'm generously applying some glue, working quite quickly here so my glue doesn't dry out before I put it into place. I set that back into the tin and then let that set up for a few moments. Now I am ready to start to decorate. So I ended up losing a little bit of my footage here, but I'll explain what I've done. So I'm first putting my little gingerbread people into place before I glue them. Here I already glued them, so I missed the part where I had glued. I ran out of storage on my device. I've never done that before, but I guess I forgot to clean my phone that day. Anyways, I'm also using this tree. I trimmed off the one side so it sits flat against the back of the gingerbread people, and I pushed that into place now with some hot glue again. You can move things around a little bit just to help you out. Here again, I lost my footage of me gluing some of the cinnamon sticks in, but I like to just press the pieces into place so I know exactly where they're gonna go, and then add glue to it and then put them back into place where I like them. So I use some cinnamon sticks as well. Now to cover up the base, I'm using some Spanish moss. You just want to add some glue and then push the moss into place. You can use your scissors to help you push all that moss into like the little tight spots, because I did need to go in between my gingerbread people as well. And I also needed to tuck some of that moss down inside of our tin. You can use some preserved reindeer moss for this as well, but I wanted a little bit of a different look, so that's why I decided to use the Spanish moss. So I'm just trimming off any of the excess. Be careful that you don't cut your strings. And I really love that, but I felt like it was still lacking a little bit, so I'm gonna go in and add this flocked greenery that I had. I like to grab bushes of this from Michael's when they go on clearance, and I just generally get some neutral colors so then I can use them all year round. So I'm just going to add a little bit, just this one cuts down really well. And then I also had this glittery one that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I'm cutting little snippets of that and tucking it in as well. I thought some little jingle bells would be cute, or other little embellishments, some berries, but I chose to use these foraged hemlock pine cones. They are, again, really nice and small, and I found them on my recent foraging trip, and I just was so excited to find them because they are really great for crafting. They are a great small size. So I have to say, this is looking great. Now I am just pulling out my 2 strands of twine and figuring out where it's going to hang best. And then I'm going to tie those 2 strands with a knot, and that's it. I'm telling you, this is so cute. I'm so happy with how this one turned out. So this is a really easy one. You're going to need a plain white ornament. I got that from Dollar Tree, and I'm using these leaf rub-on transfers that I got from Dollar Tree as well. You can see that these have already been used, but I wanted to just cut them down, and then I find it easier to work with these if you cut them down first before you apply them, because otherwise the other ones could come off, and I didn't want that to happen. So I'm just selecting the ones that I like and then putting them into a pile. Now, I was going to take the topper off, but I decided to leave it into place. And what I like to do is just measure out roughly where I'm going to put it, but trim off any of the excess as needed so I can get it right up underneath the topper. Now, the rub-on actually sticks when you press it onto this plastic, and then you're going to use a craft stick, or I'm using a bone folder, and then you're going to rub over the transfer, and that will adhere it to this plastic. It worked so well. I was so impressed with how well this worked. Now you can see this ornament is round, of course. So if you need to, you can put some slits into the plastic so then it shapes better to the ornament. But I found that I didn't need to do that. I didn't have any issues getting it to stick. But if you want to do that, you can definitely go ahead and do that. But look isn't that just so cool? It worked so well. I was so happy with how this was turning out. Again, I had seen another piece that inspired me to create this, and I knew I had everything I needed to make this ornament. I think too, from what I remember, the inspiration piece was plastic as well, so that was awesome. I gave it a clear coat of some sealer so I knew that those transfers wouldn't come off. And now you can decorate the topper if you'd like, but I wanted to keep mine simple. I'm just using this beautiful iridescent gauzy ribbon, stringing it through the top, adding a knot, and then that's it. It was so simple to make. Dollar Tree have these tin deer this year, and I fell in love with it. I removed the little bow and then the hanger from this as well. You can use a little tool to snap off that little bow. You're going to want to be careful. This has got some sharp edges. Trust me, I know. I wanted to create a rusty look, so I am just using some acrylic paints. I'm applying some black paint just here and there, using a rag to dab it off. You want to work from your darkest paint to your lightest paint when you're doing this technique. I have other rusting techniques, and I'll have that video linked down in the description below. But I find that like if you're wanting to do a real rust finish, it doesn't always work. So you may need to use a painted technique instead. So now I'm using my burnt umber, just adding less, but dabbing it all over and then dabbing it off. Now I'm going over it with the burnt sienna. Again, same thing, putting some on with my paintbrush and then dabbing it off. And you can see the effect that made. I love it. I did the front and back side. Now to embellish it, I've got these faux evergreen pipe cleaners. I picked them up from my local dollar store, some pip berries, some rusted bells, and some beautiful rustic twine. I got this twine from HomeSense, which is the same as Home Goods. I'm also going to be using my cedar pine cones. So this particular faux evergreen pipe cleaner, I believe you can get it from Hobby Lobby, so you'll definitely want to check it out there. I'm just measuring a piece by wrapping it around a few times. I'm going to snip it off, and then I'm going to take it off now and fold it in half and then snip it. Using my wire cutters. You can use some strong shears if you have some. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I wanted to twist them together like I'm doing right here, and that will make it a little bit more full. So now I'm going to wrap it back around the neck of my deer. And then I'm going to use some hot glue. You can use any adhesive that you want for this. I just decided to use some hot glue. I'm going to just press that into place. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I also sealed this up with that sealant as well, that clear sealant, just so you know to do that. I'm going to add my hanger before I go any further because I didn't want to get it all tangled up with all my decorative pieces. So I'm just going to do that quickly here, and then I'll carry on with decorating. I think this twine is perfect for this particular project. So I'm going to add a little bit of color here by adding some pip berries. These pip berries are actually from Dollar Tree, but I'm snipping them right off of the garland. I'm also adding some rusty bells. I use my special technique to rust these. So again, I'll have that video linked down below for you. They were really tiny bells, so I just used hot glue to put those in place. And now I'm going to add my little pip berries. These are a darker red, and I just love that festive touch. Now I'm going to go in and also glue in my cedar pine cones. Man, I am really enjoying using these little pine cones. I am definitely going to find some more and keep them in my stash because they are a perfect size for a little project like this. And that's it. It's done. I love it. Dollar Tree has these little mini mason jars here where I live. I don't know if all the stores have them or not. I did remove the lid, and now I'm adding some Tuscan red paint, and I'm putting some generously inside, and I'm going to swirl it about. Now you could wash out like some little jam jars or little honey jars and use those instead. But like I said, I found this at my local Dollar Tree. So you'll want to check out your store to see if they have some, if you can't find any little mini jars. So I've got a container, and what I'm going to do is put some craft sticks over the top to straddle that, and then place my jar upside down to let it drip out so the excess drips out. Now, if you know how to make this paint so it's a little bit more transparent, let me know down below because I've tried a few techniques and it did not work for me. All right, so I hammered a hole into the top of my lid because I needed to be able to put my hanger there. My jar has dripped out, and I think it's for the most part good to go. I had to put it upright so it can finish drying inside. You can put a label on the opposite side if you'd like, but I really like the way that it says mason jar. I thought it was cute. And now I am going to be using some jute twine, and I'm going to thread it through that hole. And again, you want to make sure that you tie a knot. So I did struggle a little bit. I ended up having to make my hole bigger. I found a sharp metal pen and I just stabbed that through, and it made my hole a little bit bigger. It's funny what us crafters will use for tools, hey? Anyways, so now my hole is bigger, so I can thread my string in there, and then I can tie my knot on the underside. So in case you're wondering, we are making a little jam jar ornament. I again was inspired by this ornament that I had seen out and about in my travels, and I knew I had things to recreate it. That's why I was hoping to create more of a translucent paint look to make it look a little bit more like jam, but hey, I made it work. All right, so I had tied a knot, and now I'm just going to trim off the excess, adding some hot glue, and then pulling that knot so it adheres to the glue, and then that knot and hanger's not going anywhere. I have this really pretty checkered fabric. I love this fabric. It's great for Christmas time. It's got like tiny little gold stars on it as well. I just cut a square that I knew would be big enough to fit over the top. And then I decided, I'm like, you know what? I want to make this round. So I'm just folding it and then I'm going to cut it. And instead of my regular scissors, I'm like, you know what? I should be using pinking shears, but I forgot that I had pinking shears as I did this. And then I'm like, once I started playing around with it, I'm like, you know, it would really look better if I used pinking shears. So I do end up getting them out and I'll show you here in a moment. But first I needed the center of my fabric and I'm just using that pen again and just poking a hole through the center of the fabric. And then I'm able to get my string through the hole of the fabric. You can see me do that right there. And everything's fitting together really well. So I needed to adhere that, but here you see me using my pinking shears. I'm like, oh, that's right. I forgot. I do have a pair. These are actually my mom's back from when I was a kid. She kept them and she gave them to me and they worked really well still. So I like that look a whole lot better. Sometimes it's just all in the details, right? So now I am going to just cut a length. I'm going to set that aside. Before I tie that on, I needed to adhere the fabric to the lid. So I just added some fabric glue and smearing that down, spreading it with my finger, pressing that into place. Let that set up for a little bit. And now I'm ready to use that twine that I had cut. So you could use a little bit of hot glue just to adhere the twine into place, but I just made this work. I wrapped it around several times and then you want to adjust the fabric as needed. I tried to get as tight as I could and then I am just tying it off with a basic knot. So I think this is really, really cute. Again, you could add a label, but what I decided to do was actually punch out a little scallop circle out of this cute little strawberry scrapbook paper that I had got from Michael's. And I thought that would actually make a great little label for the top of our jam jar. Just figured out the center and I'm using my hole punch to punch a little hole that'll fit over my twine. And then this is like a crocodile, big chomper. I can't remember the exact name, but I did that. And then now I'm just going to be using some Aleene's tacky glue on the back side of the paper. This is one of my favorite glues to use. And I will be spreading that out with my finger again as well. And then you can put that over top. I do find that with this glue, sometimes you have to it doesn't set up right away. So you'll have to press it down a few times or add a little bit of weight to it. But that's it. It totally looks like a cute little jam jar ornament for a really fun Christmas tree. So I'm going to be using this package of little gingerbread men. This time I am using the house though. And again, I use that same paint color I had mixed up previously for the other pieces. And I'm using the slick paint to use as my icing for all the details. And I did cover up the hole. You can see that there's a little bit of a hole there. I did fill that in as well, but I did that at a later point. I don't know why I didn't do this right away. I guess I was thinking that I would be needing that hole for this particular ornament, but no, I didn't. Anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill in all the details of this, just like it's like royal icing. So I'm just going to use these little decorative elements again and using my tweezers, I'm just pressing them into place. You could use seed beads or sequins, anything you'd like. You don't even have to put these on if you don't want to. But I just like the little touch of color that these give. So I'm just going to, again, put them into place. And you can see here now I covered up that hole. I allowed this to dry. And now again, this time around, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but I did want to seal it up. I just find that when I do that, somehow it just makes the paint pop a little bit more. And I thought it made it a little bit more even all the way around. I don't know. It's just something I really like to do. I had this scrapbook paper again. I picked it up from last year. Now you can see how cute it is with those trees in the background, but I'm creating my own scene. But I did like the background of that paper with the snowflakes. I have this vintage tin that I picked up from the thrift store. So I am going to figure out which part of the scrapbook paper I want, and then I'm going to trace around the tin. And I don't know why, but I thought I could use my scissors to cut out that scalloped edge, but I'm telling you, I had no luck, and I'll show you here in a moment. So I just cut that square out, and now here I am attempting to cut that scallop. I should have just traced around just a basic circle shape, and because you'll see, you're not even going to see the edges of this paper anyways. So I ended up just fiddling around with it again here, trying to cut out that scallop. Oh, anyways, I made it work. I cut it down till it fit inside my tin. And then once you have it fitting properly, you're going to need some glue. I just used some tacky glue for this, and I find that it works just fine for this particular project, but of course use any glue that you like to use. So I just put some into place, and then I'm just using my finger to spread it out. You just want to make sure that you have enough to evenly coat all over the back side of this particular piece. Press your paper into place. Again, remember, it does take a little bit to set up, so you may have to push down the paper a few times so you know that it will stick in place. It's all nice and dry. So I am using the evergreen pipe cleaner around the inside edge of the tin. So that's why I say I did not need to worry about that scalloped edge. But anyways, it is what it is. So I'm using some hot glue to adhere the evergreen to the inner lid, and it's wire, so it's bending really well. I just needed to snip off one extra little piece and place that inside to fill in that little gap that I had. Now I'm using wood beads on the back side of our little house. You can use some little wood blocks or some like little tumbling blocks, that would work as well. But what I want to do is create kind of like a 3D look. So I needed this to be raised up against the background, and I find that these beads work great. So I'm using hot glue, put them at the back side of our little house. You can see I'm putting it into place, and it really gives it a lot of dimension. I'm using a couple of bottle brush trees here. This one is from Michael's. I get those bags of the Lemax brand, and I get them when they're 50% off, 50 or 60% off, and it's a great deal. And then Dollar Tree always has these little mini ones. I love these, they're so cute. I removed the bases off of both. The larger one I had to just clip off the back side so it would sit flat against our background of our little tin. And then once you've got your placement all figured out, you can start to glue everything into place. I ended up adding a little bit too much hot glue on the little tree, and it ended up showing, but hey, it is what it is. Just be careful that you don't do that when you add your pieces together. So I'm going to be using our preserved reindeer moss. And again, I'm just using some hot glue, and I'm going to press it into place underneath our trees. It's going to hide the bases of our tree and underneath our house as well. And that will just look like a green, grassy field in front of the house and in the trees. Love how that turned out. And then I'm going to also use the faux snow. But before I do that, I'm using a paint marker, and I'm going in and adding some white dots to the background. I want to just create a nice wintry scene for this, and the snowdrop or snow flakes were getting lost before, so I just wanted to go in and add just a few more. Now I'm adding the faux snow. So added some hot glue to the moss, and I'm pressing the faux snow into place. This works really well. And then I like to just tip it over and just tap on it to remove any of the excess. And if anything is loose, I will just use my fingers and pull that off as well, and also remove any of those pesky little glue strings. You can use a blow dryer to melt off those glue strings as well. So Dollar Tree pip berries, they had this nice bright red this year, and I thought it would be cute to add some to one of the trees. So I snipped some off, added some hot glue, and just used my tweezers to put them into place in just the larger tree, I decided. But you could use little beads. That actually would be really cute, and that would look like little ornaments as well. I just like the color of these particular pip berries. So I just snipped them down and then added a little bit of hot glue and then pressed them into the bristles of the tree. Doesn't that look cute? I really like that. So now for the hanger, I'm using baker's twine again. I really thought that it would tie in with the red that's on the front. I just cut a long strand, and then I'm just trying to figure out how long of a hanger I need. So I'm just doing that and then tying again my knots. And this one was going to be a little bit trickier. I actually wish I had a tool to punch a hole through this, but I didn't. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to glue this on. So I tied my knots, and then again, I'm using my Gorilla silicone sealant as well as hot glue. I'm also using a popsicle stick or craft stick. You can paint out the craft stick so it's gray. I just wanted to make sure I was getting the center of my ornament. So that's why I put the popsicle stick into place where it is. I'm adding a little bit of hot glue just to make sure I get my string exactly where I need it. You can see how I'm measuring the hanger. So then I'm getting it centered with the ornament, and that'll match up the front side of it. Now I'm just cutting down my popsicle stick so then it fits within the back side of the ornament. I'm adding some silicone to the middle of the craft stick, and that will stick to the tin. I'm actually being a little bit more generous with this sealant this time. And then I'm also going to be using my hot glue. I'm adding a little bit to the ends and then putting that above the knots that I had created in the string. That way here, those knots won't come sliding up. I'm trimming off a little bit of the excess, adding just a bit more hot glue over those knots, again, to prevent it from slipping out. And there you go, you've got a hanger. I'm adding a little bit more hot glue to adhere the tops of the strings to the back side of the tin, just so it hangs a little bit better and it's not flopping around. Love it. Turned out so awesome. I am so happy with how this one turned out. Dollar Tree has these ceramics. There was other shapes, but I fell in love with this house. I thought it was such a fun shape. And they have these Scandinavian inspired rub-on transfers as well. And I love these because they were kind of nature inspired. So I love that, of course. I'm going to, again, cut out the images that I liked. So another thing I noticed out my travels this season when I've been looking at different Christmas stuff was that the Scandinavian look was in this year as well. I had seen a couple of different ornaments and I thought that was so fun. And again, I knew I had this ceramic house in my stash and these rub-ons. So I'm like, let's make a Scandinavian inspired ornament. So I really like the flowers and the animals. And once I got all the images I liked, I'm going to start to lay them out because when it comes to Scandinavian stuff, I did notice that there was some symmetry. Now, I didn't go too crazy with the symmetry, but I did try to create some. So I'm going to figure out my placement for these pieces first before I start to apply them to the ceramic house. Now, like I mentioned before, there were some other shapes, but I can't remember what the other shapes are for these ceramics. So if you know, drop me a comment for everybody else as well. I would really appreciate that. So once you've got the placement figured out, you can then press these into place. They kind of are a little bit tacky, and then you can rub them with your bone folder or your craft stick. And then it did take a little bit of coaxing. I ended up having to use my tweezers to lift off the plastic, but it transferred really well. I was quite pleased with how that looked. So I'm just going to continue to apply my little transfers until I've got this piece full the way I liked it. I will make one note. I did leave around the whole of this house, like for my hanger, I did leave that area blank because I knew that my string would just be rubbing against that spot and potentially could just rub the transfers off. So I did give it a coat of my clear acrylic spray. That will help to seal in all those rub-on transfers. I am now just creating my hanger using some jute twine. Use any string you like. Fold it in half. Put the loop through the hole, and I'm tying my two ends together, and that is it. This was such an easy ornament to make, and it turned out beautifully. I had an assortment of some laser cut snowflakes, and I knew that I could layer them to create a really pretty and simple ornament. Again, I was inspired by these particular ornaments I had found in Walmart. Now, those are mini ornaments. I got bigger sized snowflakes here, and I had these smaller snowflakes in my stash for several years now. I got them at my local dollar store. Use any ones that you have and can find. So I glued those together, and now I am going to just use these greenery pieces that I got from Dollar Tree. They've got a little bit of glitter. I'm also using those pretty little cedar pine cones. I'm trimming down, or cutting down my greenery into little pieces that will fit within my little snowflakes. So I'm just using hot glue and creating a little cluster on the front, making sure that I'm not completely covering the snowflake. You want to still be able to see it, but layering it definitely gives it some definition. I think it looks great. So I added just a few pieces, and now I'm going in and adding the pine cones. You can add some berries and bells as well. That would be a really pretty touch too, but I want to keep this one quite natural looking. But these are so easy to make. You can make a set of these and give them away as a gift. You could also use these as a gift topper or put it around a bottle of wine. I thought that would be a really nice touch as well. I am just using the jute string that came with the snowflakes. These snowflakes actually did come from Dollar Tree, and they came with some of the jute twine for hangers already. You can paint those as well, but aren't they cute? I love how these turned out. I've got so much more ornament inspiration for you to check out in this video here to the right. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know your favorite ornament by leaving a comment down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.